Hello, and in this brief tutorial I'm going to show you how to quickly implement Eureka to build some kick-ass, accessible, easy to develop forms in your iOS application. So in the previous video I talked about when to use frameworks and when to roll your own code, and in my view forms is a perfect example of building frameworks, because to start off with you think, oh, forms just load text fields and buttons, I can do that, and indeed you can, but then you quickly realise, what if I want to allow the user to press with the return key and go to the next text field? Well, that's not something that is baked in by default, and you can add it yourself, but you realise over time that more and more of these basic features that are kind of not baked in, and the ground's been trodden 1,000 times before, so that's where frameworks like Eureka come in and make things really easy. So I'm going to show you how easy it is to build a complex form with a date picker, next, previous navigation in Eureka. This will also serve as a general introduction as to how to include forms, include other frameworks and use other frameworks in your Swift project. So I'm at github.com/xlab/Eureka, where you can download this, and normally you'd be using some sort of source control management, but to make this video simple, I've just downloaded the raw files. So here, if you look on my screen, I've just gone to clone and download, and then this download zip option, and I've got this zip file on my desktop here which I've extracted. I've also created a super simple app. There's just an empty view controller for us to put our code into. Now, whenever you're using a framework inside your Swift project, the framework is a project in and of itself, so Xcode needs a higher level constructor to be able to keep track of your framework and your project, so that's called a workspace. So both Xcode projects need to be embedded in a workspace to work correctly. So if we go over to Xcode, and we go to File, New, and then Workspace, we have the option to name our workspace here. I'm just going to put it on the desktop and call it, I don't know, test. We then want to go down here and add both our project files, the XC project files, to our workspace. So I'm going to add files. I'm going to go into my Eureka folder that I downloaded and say, I want to add the Eureka project file into my folder. Now, you want to be careful here, because you see in those packet files there's an example Xcode project. That's for examples that use the framework, but not actually the framework itself. So you want to make sure you include in the correct file. So I'm going to include the Xcode project. I'm also going to include my my project, because that's going to be using this framework and needs to be part of the encapsulation. So again, I'm going to say add files, and then we're going to go to cool app and say we want to add the Xcode project into my app. Now, I can do everything in my app, but I need to do a couple of things to make the cool app aware of the new framework. So in order to do that, I'm going to go into my main Xcode project, go down to linked frameworks and libraries, and hit the plus button. And it looks to see what's in my project, and it detects that there's a Eureka framework within this workspace. So I'm going to click to add that framework, and now that framework's added. But like anything in, if I click the right framework, like anything in Swift, it needs to know the individual controller files need to know whether to load all of the Swift, all of the Eureka stuff. So in order to do that, below input UI kit, we need to say import Eureka. I always like to rebuild at this point with Control B, so that my project knows about the new dependency. So I've just got a UI view controller here. Now, the main sort of parent element of all Eureka forms is the form view controller class, and that's a subclass of view controller. So we can make our view controller inherit from form view controller, and it'll inherit all the form specific stuff. Now, we obviously are going to do all our setup in code, because framework authors can't easily configure what's shown in interface builder. So if they want to make custom objects, everything has to be done in code. We're going to do it all in the view did load. Now, because this parent form view controller does a lot of stuff in its view did load, this is a case where we want to be calling a lot of stuff. We want to make sure we're calling view did load so that all the superclass can do its work. How do we use Eureka? Well, there's this form instance variable that is provided to us by Eureka, so we can get access to that by saying form, and then to add what are called sections and fields to the form, Eureka has a special syntax which is an operator overload, where you can say plus and then another object, and that's called an infix operator, and it'll by default give us that behaviour. I'm not a big fan of that behaviour, because it's a collection. with any of these form elements, it's just an array. So we can literally say append, and then also form sections. So we can treat it like a regular array, but we can use this cool syntax. So I can say in my form I want to append a section, and I can say I want to give that section a header, or I want to do something like that, but I'm just going to use the standard initializer. So I'm going to say I want an empty section, but within that section, and that's how we do that. I'm going to say I want a text row, and what does that text row class have in it? Well, all the row classes inherit from a class that requires it to have a tag, which is a tag to identify it. So I'm just going to call it name, because that's what this field is going to be for. And then I can kind of that's initialize the row, and I can add other rows by using the same syntax, but I can also just kind of add behavior to it. So I can say things like when the row has been set up, I can get hold of the cell in the row, and in here I can modify the row and say row.title equals name row dot placeholder equals Joe. I can add custom validation in this way too. I can also add specific behavior. So where in native Swift we'd use this target action API, which is kind of old Objective-C, in this framework we just use closures that are rather like jQuery callback functions. So we can just say when this value changes, we want to do something with the data. So we want to get hold of the row and say print row.value, for example, and it will give us the value of this field every time it changes. Now we can do way more advanced things than just add a name field. As you can see, that's quite cool in itself, but we can do more advanced things than that. So if I wanted to say in this section, which is that operator, I want to add another type of field, I can just say, for example, a date row. If I run this and make sure my target is my app, so that it's my app that runs rather than the framework. So I'm just going to say run on the iPhone 8 Plus. We see that I've got my title field and my date field in there, super easy. You notice if I click on my date field, I've got a date picker, something that's quite involved to do in standard Swift. I've also got a done button, so I can say when my fields are done, and I've got a next and previous button to navigate between both fields. If you're wondering why the keyboard isn't showing up, it's just because I've got the keyboard turned off in the simulator. But if I go keyboard and then toggle software keyboard, that's what a user would see. So there's just an example of 2 text fields I can add, and how little code it takes me to add those fields. There's tons more fields we can add, like Google date pickers, and it's an extensible architecture, so we can do tons of stuff with it. We can do validation, we can do checkbox fields, just tons and tons of stuff. For example, I'll just add a checkbox field actually. I'll say in this section it's that operator, and that's just the same as if I held section as the name of my section. It's just saying, as if we're saying section dot append, and all the row types inherit from something called base row. So as long as this is a subclass of base row, we'll get this behavior because it's just an array. So again, if we want to say we want to append a check row, that will give us a checkbox. So again, we need to call it an initializer and say student, as in whether they're a student or not. Run that, and we've just created a checkbox row. So in no time at all, we've created a really advanced form with loads of features. That was just a really simple example of how to use Eureka and how to implement it quickly. What we need to do is download the stuff, include both our projects in a workspace, import the framework, and then import the framework into the files. So that was a simple example there. Hope you enjoyed this video. Wasn't very detailed, but my point was to try and do this as concisely as possible. One of the key things I want you to take away is that this kind of weird custom operators syntax, it's called, it's just a different way of saying add to an array. For example, if we go into the Eureka framework here and we go into the source and into the core of the library, we see that this operators file just defines we want to append the left to the right, so it's just using a standard collection append syntax. So if you're thinking, if it's the first time you're using it and you're thinking, that's weird, I want to use some native swing syntax, literally all it's doing is appending to collections. So yeah, that's what I wanted to cover in this video. Thanks for watching, guys, and I hope it was useful. Bye bye.